Chaff. Coming up this week, it probably takes us experienced limited players 2 seconds to read the card and go, no, that's not how limited works.
It's like growing up, you talk about quicksand a lot. Like school, you're like, oh, I'm going to face quicksand in my adult life all the time.
Yeah.
Gifting, you just don't run into that often. Okay. All right. Then, yeah, I feel like Beef Wellington would be. Yeah.
What's up, Chafficionados? Welcome back to Draft Chat. This is episode 211. My name is Ben. I'm one of your hosts. And joining me on the line is Tyler. Surviving the tornado out there? Or
I was
what?
just about to say, yeah, man, I'm barely hanging on. And sounds like your electricity is barely hanging on, too.
Yeah, there may be some edits necessary for this one. My internet's been cutting out all day. I got booted out of an arena match earlier, lost the match because of it. Always feels great. But hopefully the podcast goes off uninterrupted.
Living in New Jersey this year has been interesting. We've had earthquakes, tornadoes. It doesn't feel quite like... Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it doesn't feel quite like Jersey.
Yeah, apocalyptic. But that's, it's the price you pay for living in New Jersey, I guess. Yeah. So before we hop into our first impressions show, this is our Bloomburrow kind of overview. We're going to talk about what we think of the format now that we've gotten to play with it for a couple weeks. Before we do, a couple reminders. Be sure you hop in our Discord. If you're not in there already, why not? What's your excuse? It's a great place to be to hang out with us. Upload your decks, ask us questions about picks. Just hang out. We got a great community over there. Everyone's very friendly and welcoming and honestly really helpful. People are always helping each other out with deck lists and sealed pools. And there was a qualifier happening as of recording of this, and I'll probably be dumping a sealed pool in there to see what people think because, man, the sealed pool I opened is atrocious. You saw it.
I mean, you're making it work, though.
Barely. Also, patrons, y'all are the best. If you're interested in supporting what we do here, this nonsense of Draft Chaff, hop on over to Patreon. There's a whole bunch of tiers over there. You can support this show for as little as a quarter an episode, which not a lot. Even that will get you some cool perks like stickers, show notes, behind the scenes, fun stuff. Today, our pre-show that is available to Patreons. You get to see me win a game with that absolute abysmal pool. But actually, it led to a good conversation about vector theory, so I think that all kind of worked out. And by the way, we've been uploading pretty consistently to YouTube. If you'd like to check out some of our live drafts, some other nonsense stuff over there, go and check out YouTube. We've got some... I've been having a lot of fun editing these. I've actually really enjoyed video editing. So let me know what you think of all the nonsense that you can see over there on the Draft Chaff YouTube channel. By the way, these episodes are uploaded there too. Let's hop into our crack a draft type thing for right now. We've got a pack one, pick one of just a random pack that I found online. It has no bearing on the format whatsoever. Maybe we'll use it to get us a nice litmus test about what we think so far. First out of the pack is a Pileated Provisioner, the 5-mana 3/4 flyer. ETB put a counter on a creature without flying. Have you cast this guy? Because I haven't.
No, I've never cast. This feels not great. It's the only saving quality of it is it's a bird for me.
yeah, not even a gameplay quality.
No.
This thing, I could see it acting as the top end to like a mouse deck. I think that's what it's going for, right?
Yeah.
And blue-white, it sort of has a non-flyer combo thing going on too. But blue-white has just been really underperforming.
No, and there's no real +1/+1 synergy. Like there's no real vector this wants to play into.
Mm-hmm. Next up, we've got Mind Drill Assailant, the blue-black hybrid card. 4-mana 2/5, and if you have Threshold, it's a 5/5 instead, which is nice. It also surveils. Good late-game mana sink, but again, this is suffering from a bad color pair. Blue-black is just not that great. Black cards are good. There's definitely reasons to go into blue-black, and a blue-black deck could play this, but I definitely wouldn't take it early. Mind Spiral is up next. 5-mana sorcery. You can gift a tap fish to... Frost links something down, and then you draw 3 cards. Haven't been playing a lot of this one either, to be honest.
No, it feels too slow. Like even at instant speed. Yeah, I don't know.
It's interesting you say that because I was doing a little research on 17 lands earlier, and I found out something really interesting about the speed of the format. I'm going to leave it as a cliffhanger, though. Sazakap's Brew is the next card out. The 2-mana gift a tap fish again. You can discard a card and then draw 2.
These have been a lot of
promise pump.
No, these have been a lot of like sea and deer level comments so far.
Yeah, this is honestly all junk. And Thistledown Players isn't that much better. It's not one of the best mice you want. That's the 3-mana 3/3 white mouse bard. One of the attacks, you untap target non-land permanent.
I mean, it's fine. It's a free Valiant trigger if you're attacking out, but beyond that, yeah,
That's true. I like that this one can trigger Valiant for no mana every turn, and
exactly.
not
Yeah,
all the triggers do that.
as long as it survives combat.
Yeah. Here's one, Shore Up. This is just a all-around good card. If you find yourself, unfortunately enough, playing blue in this format, I guess you should probably put one of these in your deck, especially if you have bombs to protect really good creatures. Something like Vren the Relentless would put me into blue-black rats, pack one, pick one. And Shore Up, I would definitely want one of those because, Vren would be a must-kill, that sort of thing. Can't believe that's the pick so far, but the rest of the commons aren't doing much better. High Stride, the green combat trick. Give something +1/+3 in reach and untap it. Kind of funny that both High Stride and Shore Up untap the creature that you're targeting.
Yeah, I mean, it makes them much more playable. Like, you really have to think about when you're attacking out, like, any of these creatures could untap if they have the mana up for these.
Yeah, I mean, this is just your classic 1 mana give reach. You can play around it pretty easily.
Yeah.
Not really stoked about this. Last common here is Early Winter, 5 mana, instant. You choose one, either exile target creature or target opponent exiles an enchantment they control, which doesn't always get the thing that you want because people could have multiple classes out at the same time, or Banishing Light in a class or something like that. So
Yeah, the second mode on that is such an interesting option that the opponent chooses, I guess, right? Like, why make that? It's 5 mana. Like, just let me exile your enchantment. I
I
get
think
that
it's
it's
a
in
color
black.
pie thing.
Yeah.
They don't want black to have the ability to target enchantment removal, but I think Edict enchantment is fine for the
Yeah.
black color
Negative
pie. I don't
black
know.
removal though. Printed at common.
Yeah. Anyway, 5 mana, kill something. I have found myself playing some of these if necessary, if I'm a little short and like squirrels or rats, whatever. Yeah, I'll play an Early Winter as a top end, but I'm not stoked about it. Let's hope our uncommons can do a little better. We have Calamitous Tide. 4 blue. It bounces up to 2 target creatures to their owner's hands, and then you draw 2 cards and discard a card. This can be totally backbreaking. If you're pushing damage and they somehow start to stabilize and then you bounce both their things, yeah, they just kind of get wiped. So if you are maybe unfortunately playing a blue-red deck or something and you manage to get one of these as your top end, that is pretty effective. Those little otter prowess tokens and your other otters will grow when you cast this, and then you can bounce their good blockers and smack in for a bunch. Driftgloom Coyote is our next uncommon. The 3 white 3/4, and then it's a Banishing Priest. It comes in, exile something, and if that thing happens to have power 2 or less, it gets a counter. Comes in as a 5 mana 4/5 then. Haven't actually cast this one yet myself. How about you?
I've cast it once. I mean, obviously it feels pretty good, especially if you're going to hit one of these tokens.
Yeah.
One of our bounty boards is actually to exile an Offspring with this card, which feels great. But yeah, it's like one of those cards. I feel like in a lot of these sets, there's cards that you just don't see a ton. This is one of the cards I really just, even on my opponent's side, I just don't run into it all that often.
Yeah. I guess with the way packs are collated now, you just see any individual uncommon less often.
Yeah.
And there's, I guess, more each set. I don't know. I forget about that. But some of those, though, in Discord, I'm pretty sure you, compared to sets like 5 years ago, see each individual uncommon less. But yeah, this card's solid. I actually think I like the Hive Spine Wolverine more as far as 5 mana Calamity Beasts that come in and kill someone's kid. But that one I found pretty relevant against the class cards and nuking a food or some other value artifact or enchantment. Getting something like the Heirloom Banner, that whatever that banner is, the buff thing. The Driftgloom Coyote. This one also has the downside of if you can remove it, they can get the creature back as long as it's a non-token. So it's a little bit swingy. I like it, but I'm not super stoked about it. Last uncommon here is a Moonstone Harbinger. That's the 3 mana bat. It's a 1/3 flying death touch. And whenever you gain or lose life during your turn, bats get 1/0 and get death touch until end of turn. And this only triggers once a turn either. So 1/3 flying death touch for 3. Solid little bat, but it's pretty narrow for the bat vector.
Definitely. It's a good card. Yeah. It doesn't really play into the bat vector all that much. It just says bats. It's more of a bat lord. Like, it's not really giving you life gain or life loss to really trigger those effects. But yeah, as you said, it's a decent blogger.
Definitely more in the payoff camp than enabler.
Correct. Yeah.
Let's hope our rares can help us out here. Because honestly, what's the pick so far? Driftgloom?
Yeah, probably, which doesn't even feel that great.
Yeah. And I would take like a take out the trash or even an Agate Assault above every card in this pack.
Yeah.
We've got For the Common Good. which will not be improving our chances. That's the XX green. Make X tokens that are copies of a token. Then your tokens gain indestructible, and you gain 1 life for each that you control. Just not a good
No.
rate. Not a good card. Now, speaking of making tokens, we've got a mythic here. Ral Crackling Wit, the Otter Maker. This guy's fun.
He is very fun. Just his color combo is not that fun.
Yeah. And this is sort of the headline of the set right now. And that's that otters just don't work, which is such a bummer. That being said, I've slammed pack 1, pick 1 Ral before, and I would do that at this pack too. I think this card is just so strong. Look, 4 mana, make a 1/1 prowess every turn for the rest of the game. That's good. Like, that's just a good card. And
it is. Otters have good cards. I just think the way this set plays out, it just doesn't let them shine. Like,
yeah,
Otters has. I feel like Otter has the highest support with like mythics and rares, but yeah, unfortunately, it just doesn't play out.
Yeah, a lot of the Otter cards are really fun too. It's like spell slingers.
Yes.
Yeah, even with Ral, getting counters every time you cast a non-creature spell, you can do fun things where your opponent attacks Ral, you kill one of their attackers, and then you put a loyalty counter on him, so then he sticks around when they thought they were going to kill him, and then you get another token which can chump block. Just a really annoying planeswalker to deal with.
Definitely. I'm curious to know if it's the Otter package that doesn't allow Otters to shine, or really the non-creature spells in this set really just don't play into that vector enough.
Yeah. That being said, I think it actually is the pick here. I wouldn't fault someone for taking like a Drift Gloom Coyote over it, but personally, I would take the Ral.
I would definitely take the Ral here. I mean, if we had better commons than uncommons, I'd probably take like, I mean, obviously I'd take like a Fel or the there's a couple 3 mana black card removal spells that like I think I'd take over Ral, just a safer pick. But this pack, yeah, Ral's I think the clear option here.
Yeah. Plus, as the format starts to adjust, maybe we will get to be part of the having the metronome tick back the other way, right? Where if blue-red becomes super underdrafted and you just get a bunch of like storm catch mentors, whatever those things are called, like you can start chaining those, start doing cool stuff, cheapening your spells, getting a bunch of Otterball antics. The deck can win games, just not great. With that, let's get into our first impressions of Bloomburrow. So we're around 2 weeks into the format, right? We even did pre-release and RCQ. That means we're done with the format, right? Time to move on to Duskmorn. Let's get the spoilers going. The format's
How
over.
It feels.
It's solved. Now, there's a lot to unpack here on Bloomburrow. So let's start with our first impressions. Tyler, do you like the format?
I really do like the format. It's kind of been a fresh breath of fresh air after coming off MH3, which was a really high-powered set. A lot of thinking, a lot of interaction. The set feels really grounded. The vectors play really well with each other. You're sticking to these 2 color combo pairs. They do what they want to do. You draft those colors and you play it out. It just feels like good classic Magic. It almost feels like a core set in that sense, where it's like grounded and kind of just stick to what you're going to do. I think this is going to be a set that's going to be great for new players to start out with, just so they can kind of start learning these vector theories and kind of see why these decks interact and why you want to kind of pick certain cards to stick with these 2 color pairs.
Blue-red has spells, green-white makes tokens,
Exactly.
red-green goes tall, black-green graveyard. It's fundamental.
Classic.
It's almost like Ravnica.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I was saying. These feel like like your gate sets or yeah.
Yeah. I do wish we had dual commons in this
That's
set,
the only thing this set is missing.
Yeah.
All our previous sets have had so much fixing. MH3, Outlaws, you had those uncommon and common lands to just fix. But
yeah. So of the vectors, green-white's rabbits has definitely risen to the top, the cream of the crop, if you will. Carrot cake, that's where it's at. Making 1 million tokens, going wide and pumping them somehow, buffing them with a lord like Warren Elder, or with Rabbit Response, or if you're lucky enough to get a Valley Quest Caller. Any of these things seem to be great strategies. Head of the Homestead is a particularly brutal card to see your opponent slam because it just stabilizes the board so well. And the green-white mentor, the XX, where X is the number of creatures you control, kind of gives it a different angle of attack too, that one where the bunnies can go huge instead of going wide. So I really like green-white. Probably going to settle as the best deck in the format for the entire run, and definitely one you should be happy to draft. We've got red-black lizards too. This one's also up there. Red-black lizards and green-black squirrels are also sort of in contention for the top decks of the format. We've been seeing these put up good numbers recently. And while I haven't really drafted too much of the red-black lizards deck, I have played against it. And there's a couple key cards in that deck that really help it tick. Scales of Shale, I found surprisingly impressive. That's the 3-mana trick. It gives a creature +2/+0 and indestructible and lifelink. Super swingy. If you thought you were racing like a red-white deck versus a black-red lizards deck, giving something 2/0 and lifelink, that can be the equivalent of a whole combat step worth of swing. Just gaining like 6 or 7 life, making your thing survive and their thing not. Very strong.
It's one of the cards I actually undervalued for this set because I don't know, you don't really think of these kind of combat tricks to really like change the format, but like you said, yeah, it creates such a swing. Usually playing it for 1 mana. It's also going to blow you out because it gives indestructible. Just a great card.
Yeah, it kind of acts as an anti-removal spell too, almost like a hexproof trick, at least for the damage-based ones. And squirrels. This one's been pretty impressive too. Foraging and kind of using your graveyard as a resource, dumping a whole bunch of stuff in your graveyard and then buying it back. There's probably more regrowth effects in this set than any other set I can think of. So dumping a lot of stuff in the graveyard, then getting it back to hand seems to be a good strategy. Or just, foraging a whole bunch of times to grow your board and gain life and put counters and do all the other stuff. Now, those aren't the only ones that work. You can play otters. I've had some success with these other kind of whack decks, but otters, birds, rats, the blue vectors really have been suffering. Blue and to a lesser extent red have just not been performing that well at the common, uncommon, rare level all across the board. The spells stuff, I think, is a big reason for this. The rare spell payoffs, things like Wishing Well, Festival of Embers, these just don't work in limited. It's kind of surprising. When you look at Wishing Well, it probably takes us experienced limited players 2 seconds to read the card and go, no, that's not how limited works.
No,
not anymore.
Enter, do nothing. You're just wasting your time.
Yeah.
I want to go on a quick tangent here, though, too. I'm going to keep expressing how angry I am that this format doesn't allow birds to shine. Like, I feel like blue-white flyers is such a classic limited format. Evasion's obviously powerful and limited. They didn't really give any support to birds. Like, all these other vectors, like, oh, we care about foraging. We care about, dealing damage to our opponent. We care about gaining life. Birds don't do anything. Like, none of the birds are really all that playable. And that is it. That is my quick tangent on birds.
I guess birds, what their vector was trying to do in this set was play both flyers and non-flyers.
That's the issue. You really have to play a different vector. And this is not a 3-color set. So how do you make that work,
Yeah, it's like, what are you going to do? Put in a bunch of mouse cards that are at their best when, I guess, supplemented with mouse pump spells and other mice and things that'll trigger.
Yeah.
The birds don't do that. I mean, some of the birds obviously are designed to trigger Valiant, but it's like Valiant isn't then helping the birds.
That's what I'm saying. You kind of have to play this Jeskai deck for it to even really be relevant. Like, obviously, both the common and uncommon signpost cards for birds target. So obviously, it's like, oh, this is a Valiant payoff, but there's no fixing to make it work. But we don't have to keep complaining about my favorite
Poor
thing.
birds. No, look, I love birds too. Look, I've got a
black-capped chickadee right there on the shirt.
Yeah, of course, got a black-capped chickadee. Is that what's the New Jersey state bird? Is that a goldfinch or a chickadee?
Yeah, it's a goldfinch. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, close enough. They're both small. Now, other stuff is solid in the format, but you really do want to be touching like the black, green, white. This is where a lot of the deep commons and uncommons are. I do like bats. If you happen to be the bat drafter, sort of reminds me of the elves deck from Lord of the Rings. It's like, if you're the person doing that one thing, no one else is interested. The bat stuff is all reliant on your life gain and life loss, which not a lot of other vectors touch at all.
I drafted my first bat deck not too long ago, actually, and I gotta say, it's probably the most fun I've had in this format.
Really?
It takes a lot of setup to kind of get rolling, but once you kind of get this, engine built, it's really good. It also makes Nocturnal Hunger much better because you're losing that 2 life. You're still getting all the payoffs for like your mentors.
Good point.
Good card.
Yeah, I've had the misfortune of playing against Zoraline a couple times. That card is real strong.
Yeah.
I like the raccoon vector a good amount myself. Red, green, kind of go tall. Unlike bats, which is pretty insular, basically everything can expend 4. And that way, if I'm playing red-white, I'll still take a roughshod duo, which is creeping up in my power rankings and in my favorite cards in the set personally. I love this little 3/2 trample. Great in the mouse deck, great in the raccoon deck, helps push tons of damage. Mice are also pretty scary little dudes. Those things can get in fast, and I think they have been a big part in contributing to the speed of the format, which is pretty high. Again, I'll continue the cliffhanger for later. What's been your personal favorite deck?
Yeah, so this has actually been the first set in a long time that I don't really know if I have a favorite. Like I've enjoyed kind of feeling out each vector and like just enjoying how it works, you know. Everything feels so different and unique and it's quite
Mhm.
enjoyable. Obviously the green white deck feels really good cuz it wins more often.
Who doesn't
um
like that?
I think the green white deck works so well too is it's not really like obviously it's a go wide vector, but like that's such an easy thing to build. Like when you're playing lizards, you're going to have to be dealing damage. You kind of think you got to think about these different interactions to kind of make the vectors work. But in green white, go wide and pump the board. That's pretty easy to kind of just happen.
Mhm. I've been really liking raccoons personally. Raccoons and mice, I think, are my two favorites. Unsurprisingly, the heroic deck and the spending a bunch of mana and making things big deck. Yeah, classic. Now, there's a few interactions we'd like to address in this format. As we play out games, I like to make notes of when I see a little two-card interaction that isn't necessarily like a vector synergy. Like if you bring up bats, for example, it's like, oh, you want to gain the life and you want to lose the life. Things that gain life and lose life are good with bats. But there are some more subtle synergies that we've noticed. So, expend. One thing I noticed about expend is that it pairs really well with two drops, particularly creatures and then instants. So say you have like a roughshod duo, right? The 3 mana expend 4, you buff something, you give it +1/+1 and trample till end of turn. So something you could do is you play like a creature on turn 2, a roughshod duo on turn 3. On turn 4, you play a 2-drop creature in your first main phase, and then you attack. And then your opponent has to wonder, do they have a 2-mana trick? If you have a take out the trash or a Mabel's Metal, depending on what color combination you're in, red, white, or green, white, you can represent being able to distribute an extra +1/+1 and trample anywhere you want. And that's ignoring the effect of the 2-mana instant speed spell you're about to cast. So if you take out the trash to blow out the double blocks, or even just remove a creature and then give the thing that it was blocking trample, you can set up a lot of damage really quickly. So when you're drafting expend, I recommend prioritizing 2 drops over 3 drops because 3 drops, it's much harder to expend effectively with them. So say it's like turn 4 again, and you have 3 3 drops in hand. You can't do this trick that I'm describing. You could bluff having a 1-mana spell, but if they call your bluff, then you're kind of screwed. Another 2-card combo I noticed, and actually one that I got demolished by, was Dour Port Mage and Thought Stalker Warlock.
That's gross.
This, yeah, I mean, if you get a Dour Port Mage, you should be looking for cards with good ETBs. The Thought Stalker Warlock, I don't even think they played another spell that game. They just played Warlock, bounced it, drew a card. Recast Warlock, just shredded my hands. It was disgusting. It felt like they were playing Modern. I was playing Limited.
Shred your hand and also fill up their hand. It's like
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
gross.
So here's a cool one that I noticed. 3-Tree Mascot, the 2-mana changeling that's all creature types. If you have enough cards that care about creatures, ones especially that are good enough on their own, creatures of a certain type, this thing has some weird utility. I gotta give credit to my opponent, who they played this card on turn 2. They then played Wick the World Mind on turn 4. That's the rat that comes in. It's a 2/4 and it makes a 1/1 snail. If you don't already control a snail, but 3-Tree Mascot, being a shapeshifter, is a snail. So it put a counter on the 3-Tree Mascot. So it pairs well with Wick. Then they sacrificed the snail with the 3-Tree Mascot to deal 3 damage to my face and drew 3 cards. Then they played Castrol. And because 3-Tree Mascot is also a bird, they used it to return the 3-Tree Mascot from the graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter. And then because it's also a snail, they just threw it back at my face with Wick again. It was insane.
It's like a combination of cards there. And here we are talking about how you have to focus on these 2-color vectors, and you just got kind of wiped by this 4-color nonsense.
I mean, they drew like 6 cards off of this thing. Like, and without it, none of that would have worked. So I gotta hand it to him. maybe do as they say, not as they do. I'm not sure that's a smart thing if you want to win games in this format. Playing blue, white, and blue, black are not recommended, but I thought it was pretty cool either way.
All right, the next thing we want to talk about here is cards like Cash Grab, Peerless Recycling, both like regrowth effects. If you're playing these cards, you kind of want to make sure the removal package you're playing focuses more on like these ETB effects with permanents. Some things like Sugarcoat and Hunter's Talent. There's also Banishing Light and White. If these things fall off, opponent destroys these with some effect. You can always bring them back with these cards, and it's a kind of a great way to recycle them.
Mm-hmm. If you mill something like a good kill spell, I don't know, like a fight spell with Cash Grab, and you're like, man, wish I could have picked that up. You can. And just as a general word of warning, beware of your anti-vector synergies, of which there are a handful in this set. Forage and Threshold do not play very well together at all. If you have a Threshold payoff, you don't want to be foraging. Or if you do, make sure you're sacrificing your food tokens before you're, exiling your entire graveyard. It might not seem relevant, but say you're playing like blue-green and you forage away a whole bunch of stuff with a green card, like a Bushy Bodyguard or something, and then you top deck your, I don't know, Shoreline Looter. And you're like, man, I wish I still had those 7 cards in graveyard so my looter was turned on. Beware that those two play anti to each other. Some other random things about the format that we've been noticing as we've been playing. Gifting. What do you think about this mechanic?
Yeah, so it's like one of those, when it first got kind of announced, like gifting, like it felt, I don't know, I thought it was going to be bigger, I guess. It's like growing up, you talk about quicksand a lot. Like school, you're like, oh, I'm going to face quicksand in my adult life all the time.
Yeah.
Gifting, you just don't run into that often. It's nice to have the option on the card for the additional effect, but it's never really shaken up the game enough that I think that we gave it as much like attention in the beginning as we did as it really deserves now.
Yeah, it almost seems like an asterisk at the end of a lot of these cards. Like Crumb and Get It, for example, I think is a big one. I think I've probably given the food gift on Crumb and Get It like 20%, maybe less, like 10% of the time.
Yeah.
There's a couple that are different that you always gift. The Black Thoughtseize rare, for example, you always gift because you just get another look and then you get to play that card. But most of the cards, I feel like I just never gift.
Yeah, you never really want to give your opponent more. Like, in the rare scenario, like for Crumb and Get It, for example, giving Indestructible, if you really want to save that creature from a kill spell, it might be worth giving them a single food token.
Mm-hmm.
Gifting of food seems to be pretty common too. You got to watch out if you're playing against a squirrel deck, you really are feeding their vector as well. So,
yeah. Something else about this format that I thought was worth discussing was doing a little research on 17 lands. By the way, if you're not on 17 lands, be sure to hop on there, track your data. It's great for helping improve. It also has a lot of cool features like tracking the format speed. So this is a graph, and with 17 lands data, you got to be careful to extrapolate the right things from the right data sets. Here, this graph on the horizontal axis is game win rate on the play. And so you can see about where these sets tend to fall. This is every set basically for the last however long on Arena. I've just sorted to Premier and Traditional Draft. By the way, those listening on Spotify, you can see this. We have Spotify for video. Those in YouTube, hey, you already see us. On the vertical axis is average number of turns. So game win rate on the play on the horizontal and average number of turns in the vertical. We sort of have like the astronomer maybe would call it the main sequence if you're looking at a Hertzsprung-Russell diagram. It follows the exact same path down. It slopes down to the right. So there's a decreasing relationship between average number of turns and game win rate on the play, an inverse relationship between these two, it looks like. Now, notably, we see game win rate on the play at the very right side. We see the maximum is like 0.45, which isn't actually that much. If you have a 54% win rate just by winning the die roll, you start to feel it. And even most of these sets that are clustered around 53, 52, 51, you can really start to feel it once it's past like the 51, 52 mark, especially if you play a lot of Magic and a lot of Limited. That's when you start feeling that I lost the die roll. Shoot, I'm dead. These are one-drop dependent formats. You'll notice that 1 is pushed all the way out to the front there. Same with March of the Machine and Murs at Karlov Manor. And actually, funny enough, Modern Horizons 3 is pretty far past the 0.53%. This is what you would call a quick, fast, the formats that you got to do something immediately. You got to affect the board on turn 1, 2, 3, or you're dead. Now, on the vertical axis, we have the average number of turns. Unsurprisingly, the higher the game win rate on the play is, the lower the average number of turns tends to be, because the games, I guess you could say, probably end faster if it's a 1-drop, 2-drop dependent format, like in 1, for example. Now, if you look at the other end of the main sequence here, we have the slower formats, War of the Spark, Khans of Tarkir, Ikoria even. These sets people tend to like. These are around 0.5 game win rate on the play, so it basically doesn't matter if you're on the play or the draw. Even like 0.51, 0.52 and below still feel like it doesn't really matter if you win the die roll too much. And these tend to last around 9.8 turns, somewhere in the 9 to 10 turn range. Whereas if you look at the other end of the spectrum, all will be 1, around the 8, 8.2, 8.4, up in that range of number of turns. Now, I was looking for Bloomburrow, and I actually couldn't find it at first. It's because the set symbol used was the commander one instead of the regular one, and I can't blame them for that mistake. I've mixed up the set symbols a million times. That being said, look where these fall.
I mean, it does feel like a fast format. That's something some people pointed out in the Discord pretty early on into this set, where they felt like you got to go quick, you got to go fast. And it makes sense, because I think there's a rare bomb at 1 CMC in each color that really affects the board if it enters, turn 1. Yeah, it makes sense. Feels like a quick format. I feel like I actually checked my 17 lands data prior to this to see what my play versus draw rate was. I'm on the draw a lot more this format than normal, and it definitely is noticeable. You feel,
You're feeling it.
you feel pretty far behind pretty quick.
Yeah. Just seeing this on top of All Be One, which is a pretty universally despised format, does not bode well for the future of the format. But, it's still early. I'm not going to judge anything quite yet. That being said, I don't like seeing formats that are this far off on the game win rate on the play axis. Just this by itself. I think the best formats are one where it doesn't come down to whether or not you won or lost the die roll, whether you're on the play or on the draw. I do always recommend playing best of 3, because it does sort of negate some aspects of that. It levels out some of that variance. And also, there's things with the hand smoother and best of 1 versus not. Thought that was just interesting to look at.
Yeah. It's interesting that a lot of the new sets, the game win rate on play percentage seems to be pretty high. Like we had MH3, 1, Bloomburrow,
LCI.
Murders there, LCI, even Thunder Junction's kind of low there. And as you mentioned before, some of the, most well-liked draft formats like Khans and War of the Spark are all clustered near the top left of this draft, where the game wins percentage is pretty even, and these are longer played out games. But these are older sets now. It's like, where's draft going? It's like everything's speeding up. Is this really where we want to be?
Yeah. As long as we don't move too far outside this nice main sequence here, I guess we'll probably be fine. I mean, I drafted a lot of 1 for sure. And as long as there's still fun things to do. 1 had some other problems, like Toxic was a thing in that format, which I don't think anyone likes.
Is that the oil set too, where it felt like you're just doing those 2 things? Yeah.
Oil counters with red-green oil. And
yes. Okay.
That set was a mess.
All right, I don't have to think about it anymore.
Yeah. With that, I think we should hop into our listener question of the week, which wasn't technically a listener question, but I'm pulling it anyway. Dorgan asked in Discord, is beef Wellington a giant dumpling? Now, those that don't know, back when Zach was on the show, we had a little dumpling dudes spin-off every once in a while where we would discuss the various dumplings from around the world. Is beef Wellington a dumpling?
All right, I feel like we have to revisit what a dumpling is. So is it just any dough-covered product?
I think it's got to be a what you call a filling, like meat, vegetable, spice, herbs, like something along those lines, and then a carb on the outside.
Okay. All right. Then, I feel like beef Wellington would be, a giant dumpling.
Honestly, I like this graphic that Dorgan posted in Discord. Hop in there and check it out if you haven't seen it. But corn dog being in the same as the Wellington family, I do fully agree with this. Yeah. And pigs in a blanket, obviously, are function the same as a corn dog.
This feels like Pokemon evolutions here. You have corn dog as the starter evolution that evolves into pig in the blanket and eventually beef Wellington.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's hit our Teferi Tibalts for this week. What's up? What's new? What's good? What's bad?
Yeah, so Teferi this week, I'm actually hosting a dinner party tonight. I'm a big fan of cooking. I really enjoy cooking for people. So I'm making some nice homemade lasagna tonight. I made these olive oil lemon bars that actually turned out pretty
Ooh,
well. I'm hoping they set. I haven't checked them yet, but batter turned out pretty good. Tybalt this week had a call with my team at work. Learned that I'm going to be having to go into the office 3 days a week. I currently do one, but
rough.
it's a 2 hour commute one
Oh,
way, so that's going to be like 12 hours of driving 3 days in the week. So not too
that's
happy about
brutal.
that. Yeah,
Yeah. Is there anything you can do about that? Like,
quit. No, I don't know. They'll work with me too. The issue is that doesn't start till November. My baby is coming early November too, and most daycares close at 6. So something's got to budge. We'll
jeez.
see. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope it works out.
How about you, man? How's your week looking?
It's all right. By the time this episode releases, I will have already spent the week in Provincetown up in Rhode Island. So I've heard it's a fun place. A lot of cool things going on there. We're gonna do some hiking, some walking around, some other visits and stops on the way up. Got some whale watches scheduled.
Ooh.
That should be pretty cool. I'm going with my brother, so I'm sure will point out all the various seabirds that all look just like loons to me. But that'll be a lot of fun. Also, there's a qualifier happening right now. I don't even know if I'd have time to finish it because I'm going to be doing some driving tomorrow as of recording, but yeah, it's whatever. And my tip this week would be the weather's just been so strange with the internet going down and now like a tornado warning or watch or
Yeah,
one of those.
I don't know what's going on in New Jersey right now.
Yeah, whatever. Anywho, thanks for hanging out with us as we chatted about our first impressions. Let us know what you thought, whether you thought we missed any big vectors or if you disagreed about our takes on any of this. Hop on over in Discord and let us know. Be sure to check us out on Patreon. Check out some of the perks over there if you're interested in supporting the nonsense that we do here. Check out YouTube. We've been uploading a lot of fun stuff over there. Come watch our live drafts. And yeah, we talk a lot of nonsense on the show, but we can actually back it up with some game wins. Don't worry. And be sure to follow us on Twitter, other social medias, and etc. Thanks for listening, and see you next week. So before we bounce,
Yeah.
I was thinking we had a conversation a while back about Adventure Time, the different color schemes that each of the people would fall into.
Okay.
And we were discussing another show recently, The Bear,
Oh boy.
which
Okay.
I expect that many people listening and watching have seen. What is Carmi's color identity?
All right. Before I dump into let's just say everybody in this show has to have red mana in them with how much
Yeah,
emotion is thrown around in this
yeah.
show. Oh man, Carmi, the man who doesn't learn from his mistakes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, mono red doesn't feel too far off, but I think the finesse that he has through cooking, I don't know what that would push him into, like a little more control.
Cooking does tend to be green in the Magic color
It
identity.
does, yeah. I guess he would be a food deck, wouldn't he?
You think he's red-green?
Red, green, and like you sacrifice your foods to deal damage or something like
He's
that.
like a force to be reckoned with. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I see it. I can see it.
I love these like custom like thought bubble ideas for
Now, what about Sid?
Sid's more calm. So I think Sid's the kind of blue mage to Carmi's red mage almost,
Mm.
like the voice of reason. Obviously she can lose her temper a little bit too, but it's in a different, like she thinks things through farther
Mhm.
than Carmi does. I haven't seen these season 3 yet either though, so who
No
knows.
spoilers. But,
Yeah.
do you think she's Simic?
See, I feel like everybody has red in them just because of how much emotion is thrown around in this set
Yeah. I don't
or
know.
in this show.
I could see her being like an angry green,
Okay.
like a righteous anger, like a
Teamer.
Garrick almost, or Teamer.
Yeah.
Yeah. But she's definitely not as impulsive,
No.
Interesting. Who else can we analyze?
What's cousin's name? I always forget his name.
Mitt.
See, we're both awful at names.
It's cousin.
Ricky, no,
Richie.
Richie. Yeah. I think Richie sounds right.
Yeah.
So Richie is a character that's grown a lot through this show.
Yeah.
Like obviously, I think he started off. He might have been in the Black Mana. Are you confirming it's Richie? But yeah, I don't know. Richie's tough because he's obviously grown, at least through season 2, in my eyes, the most. He kind of calmed down. He reflected inward a lot. But I don't know. Everybody has Red to me. Like if you watch the show, you can't get through an episode without like some big outburst or like very large emotional scene. And Red seems to be the man of emotion.
Yeah. What about Neil Fack?
Oh my God, you love Facts, right? The Facts are your favorite characters.
Stand the I hate these guys. They're just like little. They might just be mono red, just like little gremlins running around.
I was thinking mono green.
Stuff. Oh yeah, just like
a
lot of red and green in this kitchen for sure. What about Joel McHale? The chef.
One's Joel?
Joel McHale's the actor. I don't know the guy's name. I don't even know if he has a name. Carmi's overbearing chef from whom he suffered tons of abuse.
Oh.
He also plays the
mono black.
Yeah. I think so. And how about Uncle Jimmy? Kind of the funder of this enterprise.
Uncle Jimmy. Oh, he's so controlling, but he's also so helpful. Maybe Azorius?
Yeah, I was thinking something like that.
Yeah.
See,
let's just build universe beyond Sans. Like that's what we should do. Is just
I think we'd be pretty good at it. Wizards, you heard it here first. Give us some
Cyrus. I mean, the bear universe beyond.